Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about is the software. Here I have opened the Atmos Studio 6 and NetBeans IDE. And let's take a quick look first at the code for the C code for the MCU. And you can use this code if you want. I'm going to have it linked down below somewhere. I don't mind. Here we have just the declarations. Here are the two functions required for the UART library. And this I took this library from a guy named Patrick O'Daniel. He makes pretty decent tutorials, and you should check them out. And this one's on UART, and he has a specifically one on how to make a library for the UART. So that's that, and he actually makes the version for the AtMega, so I just took it and modified a few things, and it works on the AtTiny4313 without any problems. So if you want, you can use this one as well. Then we have the idle state, which basically loops infinitely and waits for. I have three switches to either increment, decrement, or to launch. Okay, and for as software debouncing for the buttons, I've got this function here which sort of debounces the buttons, and if everything's okay, then it launches the appropriate function. So here I have the launch. I set up here I have the trigger, basically turns on the trigger, delays with the amount of the pulse width, and then it closes the trigger. That's the pulse activation. Then what I do here is I enable one global timer. This is the 16-bit timer, and then I enable the 8-bit timer. And what I would do here is I wait for the one gate, and I wait for the second gate, and the first timer is plays the role of the timeout timer. So basically, if the gates aren't triggered at all, if there's a problem or something and the launch doesn't pass, then it goes into an interrupt service routine, and it raises the timeout flag to say that there was a problem. The launch was not correct. So I use the timer 0 to time the period between these two gates. You see these two while loops, okay? And after that, I just transmit everything to the UART. So the timeout flag, the pulse width, first gate, second gate, if it was triggered or not, and the timer 0. And what I do after here in Java is I take these inputs. You see, I read the 5 bytes, transmit it. I do a few calculations to calculate the speed, and I press send it out. So let me show you first quickly the demo. So I have the projectile lane. I'm gonna launch it, and there we go. You can see timeout 0. There was no timeout. The pulse width is 1400 microseconds. First gate triggered, yes. Second gate, yes. The timer value, and after the calculations, that comes out to 17.9 meters per second speed of the projectile. So yeah, okay, on how to connect to Java, you might be wondering. It's really simple. I mean, I hope if you want to do this that you've programmed a little bit in Java. Even if you haven't, if you follow this, if you copy the code and do the rest of the stuff, you can get it up and running. Basically, the converter that I'm using is something like this. There are many different versions. You can buy them in many different places. It costs like $2 with shipping. It's really cheap. And all you do is you just plug it in. You install the drivers for this, the CP2102. Install the drivers, connect to the COM port, and then you can either, if you want, you can if you don't want to go into Java, you can use something like the Hyper Serial port. Basically, just connect here to the appropriate port, and you can just send data. And there's a terminal here, and it will just show you the data. Okay, it's a no fuss, quick solution. But if you wanna use Java, then what you can do is download this JSSC library. It's really easy to use. Basically, here you have the download page, and in this page you have the installation guide, how to get it started, and everything else, and the example codes here. Or you can use my example code. You just make a new COM port object. I have the main here. I make a new COM port object, and I just initialize a stereo port. You have to look in your devices, in your control panel, to see what COM it is. I have it on the 4th USB port, and yeah, you set the baud rate, everything else you see here, this should agree with this, okay, at least on some level. This is more detail explained in the tutorial on the JSSC, and I just have a while loop. I declare an input and I read the 5 bytes, and I just, you know, send it out to the terminal. So that's about it. If you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. I might be making a tutorial on in detail on how to connect the JSSC library, but it's pretty easy. You know, you just add it to the NetBeans and do a few things, and it's up and running. So if you guys want to see anything else in detail, or guys have any questions, you can just ask them or write to me in YouTube. So thanks for watching.